Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Ochoa, and my topic is the significance of alcohol in East Asia in comparison to the West. So, here's my outline, and in this presentation, it will cover historical content, my thesis, my chosen secondary sources, one being Softer Soju in South Korea by Nicholas Harkness, and the second being Comparison of the Difference Between Chinese and Western Drinking Culture by Li Rong Jing. Then I'm going to move on to my primary sources. The first one is Sake ceramic set for traditional Japanese alcohol, drink rice wine. And the second is Drinking Alone in the Moonlight by Lee Tai-po. And then finally, my conclusion. So, beginning with historical content, there are various forms of alcohol which have developed differently. It can be seen socially in media, religion, myths, diet, and the list continues. There are continuous changes in attitudes towards alcohol, since it has usually been a popular item and choice of drink throughout the world. Alcohol was prevalent in Europe during the 18th century and was valuable in influencing trade. However, they began seeing it as a consumption problem. In East Asia, alcohol was also prevalent but had different social meanings. And most research on alcohol consumption focused on the health problems and addictions instead of its cultural value. And now I'm going to read my thesis. So, my thesis begins with although globalization caused many different items to gain popularity throughout the continent, most items that gained popularity were Western products. Alcohol has its roots in various countries and is not associated with just one place. Therefore, an analysis of specific unique East Asian alcohol and drinking cultures is discussed from an analytical perspective to understand and bring light to other drinking cultures. This approach compares Western countries and East Asia to reveal the significance of alcohol and how it shapes everyday items and mannerisms. Hence, following a comparative narrative reveals how alcohol is consumed in East Asia and differs from Western culture because of the unique social responses and influence on their drinking habits. The differences in alcoholic beverages also have a cultural and societal impact that reveals less known perspectives. So now moving on to my first secondary source, which was Softer Soju in South Korea by Nicholas Harkness. Harkness argues that identity and gender perception is affected by the relationship between softness, which is the quality of alcohol, through the use of ethnographic evidence and advertisements. This is because in Korea, stronger alcohol was usually consumed, and softness refers to a lower alcohol content. Therefore, it showed how alcohol was seen as a manly thing in East Asia, but had changed to include women. Men who drink lower content of alcohol were not labeled as feminine, but just as different forms of manly. Therefore, the significance of this article expresses how drinking culture is shaped through gender and identity norms. His focus on contemporary Korea shows the changes that happen due to the inclusion of women in the drinking scene. For example, the shift from a focus on hypermasculinity to femininity. And then below is some advertisements that Harkness describe. So on one side, we have a man saying, I am a player, so I don't exceed 19.8%. And here we see that he still identifies as being a man and being manly, even though it's not like in a man's way. Other ads also show that drinking a softer soju was equated to being a gentleman. And on the other side, we have a woman who is saying, I am a princess, therefore I shouldn't exceed 19.8%. And that is still showing that she is feminine and it fits the Korean gender and identity norms. So then moving on to my secondary source, which is Comparison of the Difference Between Chinese and Western Drinking Culture by Li Rong Zhang. So the author here argues that China and the West had different meanings in the way they consumed alcohol. Zhang uses comparative history and mainly emphasizes the differences in enjoying wine. For example, Europeans most likely drank alcohol to enjoy its taste, and in East Asia, drinking alcohol was enjoyed for the social interactions it created. It also explained how alcohol was seen. And for example, it mentioned how in Russia it was common to see drunk people frozen to death. Therefore, they had a raising concern about alcoholism. But in East Asia, being drunk was actually encouraged. So, the significance of this article was to note the usage of wine in daily life and the influences it had on each region's acceptance of alcohol. It also demonstrated the development of drinking games and literature focused around alcohol. So, then the first primary source I'm going to analyze is an image called Sake Ceramic Set for Traditional Japanese Alcohol Drink Rice Wine. So, here in the image, we see three sake cups in a pitcher. So, a common sake cup is short, unlike typical Western wine glasses. Its color and design varied on an individual's aesthetic and purpose. So a cup might be more um, had more traditional designs if it was going to be used in a religious ritual compared to a more everyday use. And sake cups were created to help regulate drinks' taste through temperature. Ceramic cups were also favored depending on temperature since it releases heat slower than if poured in glass. Therefore, depending on the type of sake cup, you can enjoy extremely cold or hot temperature sake. And examples of warm to room temperature sake include Jinjoshu, Junmaishu, and Hanzojoshu. So this image reveals that different cups are created as a result of drinking culture preferences. So then my second primary source is Drinking Alone in the Moonlight by Li Taipao. Here on the side, very representative of the title, there's a man drinking alone under the moonlight. And the poem is about a man who's drinking alone, but he wants to drink with friends. Therefore, the moon and the shadow become his friends while he drinks. However, he's sad that the moon cannot drink with him. And it's a two-part poem. And part of the poem says, if heaven did not love wine, it would be no wine star in heaven. If earth did not love wine, there should be no wine springs on earth. Why then be ashamed before heaven to love wine? So then more analysis on the poem is that literature and poems reveal that drinking was not as stigmatized in East Asia compared to Europe, where there was a rise in concern due to the amount of alcohol they consumed. East Asian poets usually made a connection to nature in their poems, and instead of shaming drunkenness, it was actually romanticized. The rest of the poem reinforced that drinking was a joyous activity to partake in socially. And then finally, my conclusion. So while East Asian and the West share similarities in culture, there are differences that make each unique. Alcohol established that similar products can be created, but consumption and development will differ. In daily life, it could be seen in identity, mannerisms, beverage glasses, and literature. Overall, the integration of alcohol into daily life and activities demonstrate how culture was reshaped over time and that there was various factors, both local and global, involved in the development of drinking cultures. And then here's my bibliography, my primary sources, my secondary sources. And I would like to thank everyone for listening to my presentation. Thank you.